One of the things we want to start off with is just what is team culture? How do you create it? What aspects make up team culture? And the same could be for organizational culture. There are a lot of models that are out there. This particular one is by Edgar Schein, and it really is kind of built on a kind of an approach that says there are some underlying foundational elements. In this case, we're going to call them underlying assumptions. So habits, perceptions, beliefs, thoughts, feelings, that are really kind of core to who individuals are. And then built on top of that are a set of values. Sometimes those are codified in things like policies and standards. And most organizations and teams have those, whether they're extremely explicit and predefined, or they evolve over time. And then the third piece is what we consider artifacts and practices. And this is oftentimes the stuff that you experience most, especially if you're co-located in the same physical space. So like space layout, dress codes, et cetera, are things that you just notice. You walk into an office and you experience that aspect of their culture. Are you greeted? Do people nod and say hello when they pass you in the hallways? For a remote team, some of those things could be virtual in nature. So emojis and GIFs are really easy examples, especially when you're using tools like Slack or other tools that Jevin will talk about today as well. They also could just be verbal, so stories, jokes. I often think about just our trips to down the block to grab lunch at Jimmy John's or Chipotle's. And those are things that have, if we're thinking about those on a scale, one is from a visibility and awareness perspective, obviously the artifacts and practices, those things that you experience on a day-to-day basis that are very, very visible and very present on a more co-located team. High visibility and awareness for those things, but maybe low in terms of underlying assumptions. And then in terms of the ability to impact culture or the impact of changing an organizational culture, team culture, those things that are at the bottom, the habits, the perceptions, the thoughts and the feelings, those things are harder to change and it takes a longer time period. And so I think at least primarily the initial thrust of this presentation today is going to focus on relationships and the collaborative aspect of being a remote team. And oftentimes, if you're talking about artifacts and practices, those things that are visible in nature, that tends to be some of the hardest, most complicated things to create for remote teams. So we really want to focus on that in probably the first 2/3 of the presentation, and I'll come back towards the back half and give some other examples of some of those lower two items that can also have a huge impact on building team performance.